In recent days, something unprecedented has shaken the entire judicial and political system of the United States. The Supreme Court has issued an emergency decision that could forever change the way the country views the right to bear arms. According to reports, the court decided to immediately end the national firearm permit system, and the most shocking part is that this move has received direct support from the Department of Justice and several state governments. Yes, you heard that right. The federal government itself appears to be backing the end of formal authorization for carrying firearms. This has triggered a massive wave of debate, fear, and outrage across the nation. Some are calling it a historic victory for individual freedom, while others warn it could be the beginning of armed chaos. While many celebrate this as a way to return power to ordinary citizens, others argue it's the most dangerous step ever taken in modern American history. But what's really behind this sudden and controversial decision? Did the Supreme Court bow to pressure from pro-gun lobbyists? Or is there something much deeper happening here, perhaps a strategy to further divide the nation in an already tense political climate? What's at stake goes far beyond simple gun permits. We're talking about power, control, fear, and freedom, and how these forces are quietly shaping the future of America. So make sure you watch until the very end, because the final revelation will leave you completely speechless and might change the way you see the relationship between the government, the courts, and the people. Before we continue, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's extremely important because it tells YouTube that this content matters and helps the platform recommend this video to more people who deserve to know the truth behind what's happening right now. Your subscription keeps this channel alive and allows us to bring you real, unfiltered information every week. And finally, leave a comment below telling me what shocked you the most about this story. I want to hear your thoughts on just how far the Supreme Court is willing to go in the name of freedom. Imagine a moment where the entire framework of firearm licensing in the United States collapses overnight by the stroke of a pen from the highest court in the land. Recently, it has been reported that the Supreme Court issued an emergency decision to immediately end firearm permits nationwide. And what makes this even more shocking is that the move has allegedly gained support from the Department of Justice, DOJ, and several state governments. If true, we are witnessing one of the most dramatic shifts in the never-ending battle over guns in America, a fight between personal liberty and public safety, between unfiltered rights and the risk of widespread chaos. To make sense of this story, let's break it down step by step, following the most critical points. 1. The historical context of the Second Amendment since the ratification of the Bill of Rights. The Second Amendment has been one of the most controversial and heavily debated provisions in the U.S. Constitution. For centuries, the question has remained, does the right to keep and bear arms mean an individual right with minimal restrictions, or a right subject to strong state regulation? Over time, courts and politicians have answered differently, fueling an endless cycle of litigation and political clashes. 2. The importance of the 2008 Heller decision. The modern legal interpretation begins with the landmark case District of Columbia versus Heller, 2008, where the Supreme Court ruled that individuals have a constitutional right to possess firearms unconnected with service in a militia, particularly for self-defense within the home. This ruling opened the floodgates for challenges to restrictive state laws and reshaped the national debate. 3. The Bruen case of 2022 as a turning point in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen. 2022, the court struck down New York's strict concealed carry licensing scheme, which required applicants to show proper cause before receiving a permit. The court held that this violated the Second Amendment, emphasizing that modern regulations must be consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. This ruling shook the foundations of every state licensing system and set the stage for the potential elimination of permits entirely. 4. The nature of an emergency decision by the Supreme Court. Normally, Supreme Court decisions take months of deliberation and are released in full opinions. However, emergency decisions, or shadow docket, rulings can be issued quickly, often without full briefing or oral arguments. Such a decision to suspend or strike down licensing requirements would go into effect immediately, leaving states scrambling to comply. This is why the phrase emergency decision raises alarms, because it bypasses normal debate and imposes immediate nationwide consequences. 5. The DOJ's unprecedented role in supporting gun owners. One of the most surprising developments has been the DOJ's action in suing the Los Angeles County Sheriff Department for allegedly delaying and obstructing concealed carry permit applications. According to the DOJ, thousands of applications were left pending for months or even years, with only 2 approvals out of more than 8,000 submissions. This lawsuit, filed in 2025, marks the first affirmative action by the DOJ in support of gun owners, a shocking reversal from its usual role of enforcing gun control. This context explains why the DOJ might support broader efforts to eliminate permits altogether, because local authorities were effectively turning permits into bans. 6. State governments divided, but some aligning with deregulation. States are deeply divided. Over 25 states already allow permitless carry, meaning law-abiding adults can carry concealed firearms without government authorization. Other states like California, New York, and New Jersey continue to enforce strict licensing systems. If the Supreme Court declares licensing unconstitutional, pro-gun states will celebrate it as validation, while anti-gun states will resist and potentially launch legal countermeasures. 7. Risks and dangers of eliminating permits. Critics argue that completely abolishing firearm permits is reckless. Without licensing, there are fewer opportunities to screen individuals for mental health issues, criminal records, or domestic violence risks. Law enforcement agencies lose their main preventative tool, and public safety could be undermined. The rise in gun ownership without training or background checks could fuel violent crime, accidental shootings, and mass shootings. 8. Contradictions in recent Supreme Court rulings. It is important to note that the Supreme Court has not always favored absolute gun rights. In United States versus Rahimi, 2024, the court upheld restrictions on gun ownership for individuals under domestic violence restraining orders. In Bondi v. Vanderstock, 2024, the court allowed federal regulations on unfinished gun parts or ghost gun kits. These cases show that the court sometimes balances freedom with safety. This raises the question, would the court really eliminate all licensing, or is this decision exaggerated by political narratives? 9. The political angle. A strategy behind the decision. Some analysts argue that such a drastic decision would not be purely legal, but also deeply political. With the United States polarized ahead of major elections, gun rights remain a powerful tool to energize conservative and libertarian voters. By striking down permits nationwide, the court could be making a move that aligns with powerful lobbying groups like the NRA and mobilizes millions of gun rights supporters. The DOJ's unusual support might also reflect political calculations, framing the move as a civil rights victory for ordinary citizens. 10. Real-world implications for citizens. If firearm permits are truly abolished, millions of Americans currently waiting for licenses would instantly be freed from the bureaucratic process. Carrying a firearm in public would become as simple as owning one at home. However, this also means a sudden influx of armed individuals in public spaces, with law enforcement losing oversight. Questions would arise about sensitive places such as schools, airports, and government buildings. Would states still be able to ban firearms in these areas? Or would such restrictions also collapse under the new legal precedent? 11. Possible state resistance and a new legal civil war. Even if the Supreme Court issues an emergency ruling, compliance is not guaranteed. States like California and New York may attempt to resist, pass alternative restrictions, or delay enforcement. This could spark a legal and constitutional showdown between state sovereignty and federal supremacy, echoing conflicts of the civil rights era. The nation could once again be split between gun freedom states and gun control states. 12. The revelation at the end, and here is the most shocking possibility, that this entire emergency decision is not just about the Second Amendment but about reshaping the balance of power in America. By abolishing permits, the court may be signaling a broader shift toward limiting the regulatory powers of states and strengthening the interpretation of individual rights at the federal level. This could create ripple effects not just for guns, but for abortion, voting laws, and other divisive issues. The last revelation is that the Supreme Court may be laying the groundwork for a new era of constitutional interpretation, one that rewrites the rules of American life as we know it. So don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave your comment about what shocked you most about this decision, and I'll see you in the next video.